On this New Year's Eve, there are a lot of things that are going to change when that ball drops. There's going to be a new plan in place against the Denver Broncos. And for the playoffs, Matt Derrick's going to take us through it all today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for making us your first listen here on Locked On Podcast Network. Check out another Locked On show next time. We're brought to you by FanDuel. You can get a huge return right now. New customers, if you get in there and place a $5 bet, you can get $250 back in bonus bets just for winning that first $5 bet. Check it out at FanDuel.com and get started. We're going to get started on a lot of cool places. This is Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest. If you never watch a Wednesday show on this channel, then you've never seen Matt before. But otherwise, he is our resident expert insider, the editor-in-chief at ChiefsDigest.com and Chiefs Digest here on YouTube. Check those out as well. And the co-host, main host, big boss at 41 is the Mike, the podcast as well. So check that out on top of it. Thanks for being with us. Make sure you like, sub, hit the bell, do the things. Check out my stuff at NFL33.com and RGRfootball.com. And Chris's, even though he'll be back tomorrow with a special show, he's over at KC Chiefs Corner. So what are we going to do? There's this whole last season regular game against an old foe. We're going to talk matchups and predictions coming up later. Before that, what is the best case scenario? Or what are the concepts that are good scenarios for this Chiefs team? That's coming up a little bit later. And we're going to start with what this team's going to look like against the Broncos. There's going to be a lot of change-ups, Matt. I think I'm fairly certain, if I decode the Reid philosophy enough and the Santa's words, no Pat, no Travis, no Chris Jones. Everything else is kind of non-committal at this point, right?
Yeah, Andy Reid on Monday during his Monday press conference kind of somewhat back to normal after a couple of weeks of craziness in the schedule. I can't keep track of what day of the week it is now with the Chiefs and the way that they've been the last few weeks. But on his Monday press conference, he said he wasn't going to tell us what the plan was for week 18 until he had a chance to tell the players, since he gave them the kind of an extended day off. Usually if the Chiefs have a Thursday game, anything like that, Wednesday in this case, they'd be back in on a Sunday, gave them an extra day off to come in on a Monday. So as of noon Monday, supposedly hadn't told the team yet about what the plan was. But the fact that he suggested that there was a plan at least plants the kernels that, yes, this will be a week that the Chiefs do rest some of their starters, would fully expect that. Even though it's going to be an extended layoff for some, I don't think that's an issue. There's some guys who absolutely could use a break. They've played a lot of snaps this year. You've got a veteran team that I don't think that's going to be an issue with. I mean, does anybody expect that Patrick Mahomes, if he doesn't play in week 18, is going to come back in the divisional round rusty? I sure don't. I mean, I just don't think that's going to happen. So the best case scenario would be that you've got Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and Mahomes and maybe a few other guys coming off completely refreshed and ready for quick three game push to the three-peat.
I think that's the main goal, and like how you optimize that, because we've been talking about it, Chris and I, all week, as to what we'd like to see. What are the options, right? For me, it's got to be Carson. I think we're all akin to that. Nothing against Chris Aludicone, but you need to see Carson Wentz, especially if there's any reason that you think, hey, maybe he has to take a couple of snaps here or there or whatever happens. That's pretty basic. But on this roster, knowing that you have to have 53 on the actual active roster and 45 on game day, there's not that many options to rest guys or dress guys and not have them play, right? So after the basics, where do you go? What do you think is like maybe the position group that should be receiving the most attention in terms of rest?
Yeah, and I mean, I think obviously your 7 inactives might be fairly obvious. I mean, it's going to be guys that I think are you can name 3 of them right now. I mean, Patrick Mahomes isn't going to play. Last year is a good example. Look at what the Chiefs did in Week 18 against the Chargers. Mahomes was inactive. They elevated Chris Oladokun just to have a backup quarterback for the game, but Blaine Gabbert in that case played the whole game. I would expect Carson Wentz to start this game. We'll see if they do the same thing, but I would expect that they probably will elevate Oladokun and let him get some work this week. And last year I think the Chiefs ended up with about 12 to 14 players who didn't play in Week 18, and that when Andy Reid gets a chance to rest, that's kind of what they do. I mean, they have a few more players who are active but just don't get in the game. The offensive line will be an interesting one. I mean, I would rest Joe Thuney, especially if they're thinking to themselves that, hey, Joe Thuney might be their left tackle. I think you want to see DJ Humphries play left tackle, but if you can give Joe Thuney a rest, maybe Creed Humphrey, maybe Trey Smith, maybe Jawan Taylor is almost a given with the strained knee. I think you want to just give him more time off and let that thing get 100%. But if I'm Andy Reid and his staff and this organization, I want to see Hunter Norzad and CJ Hansen in extended action, because those guys right now, I mean, looking at who's under contract for 2025, you'd be penciling those guys in as starters potentially right now, at least one of them, because, maybe Mike Caliendo too. But, right now you've got two spots that you have not really guaranteed and solidified for next year. Defensively, I mean, Justin Reed, probably one of the guys I'd have, maybe a Nick Bolton. I mean, some guys who've just played a lot of snaps this year who are veterans, give you a chance to maybe get a Chamari Connor out there or Chris Roland Wallace to play extended roles and maybe do more than they usually do. I mean, you could get the 7 inactives pretty quickly, and then probably a handful of other players that are active but won't play unless there's an emergency. So, but just bank on a bunch of young guys, a bunch of backups, guys who haven't normally gotten to play a lot this year. That would be great for the Chiefs, because then, you've gotten some snaps for these guys that if you need them in a pinch during the playoffs, they don't have to go that far back before they've been in there.
Yeah, I like that plan. I think the one thing that I would question is I don't see any benefit personally to DJ Humphries playing in this ballgame. Do you think it's worth it enough to get his blood pumping and knock the rust off versus the possibility for more rest, given that it's a soft tissue injury?
Yeah, I mean, if he's as close to 100% as you can get, and they certainly feel like that, the rest has been enough yet, and he doesn't need more, I'd get him out there just to see what he looks like and to knock a little bit of the rust off, because that's the one guy that, I mean, he's only played 3/4 of a game in the last year. I mean, as a Chiefs coach and evaluator, you really don't know what he is. So I think they'd like to get him out there for at least a half just to make sure he's comfortable. If he's not 100% and you do have to wait, then, I mean, I think that you're really at a spot of, can you trust DJ Humphries on that 3/4 of body of work, putting him out there at left tackle? Because I don't think if you're the Chiefs that you want to be in a situation where you put DJ Humphries out there, he struggles, and then you're moving Joe Thuney. Sure. I mean, I think if you're the Chiefs, you'd rather just go ahead and start with Joe Thuney at left tackle. But I think the Chiefs do view this situation as their best offensive line would be with DJ Humphries at left tackle and Joe Thuney at left guard. But that's just based on projection. It's not based on anything that they've been able to see, because once again, they've only seen 3/4 of it. And even that was just knocking off a little bit of the rust for Humphries.
Yeah, I think that's probably, it's a toss up here, but there are two ways that they can go. We should know here later in the week after the holiday, but what they do there affects the outcome of this game. And that affects more so than normal what will happen to the Chiefs in the playoffs. And those are the scenarios that I want to count down and walk through with you, because I think they're more important than any other year that we've seen them make a playoff run at this point. So we're going to get to that coming up next. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you can bet just $5 and you get $150 back in bonus bets if you win right now. FanDuel Sportsbook, the app, gives you everything that you need to get bets in place for the NFL all in one place. So when you got a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to check out the latest stats, you live by that play-by-play, you can do that and much more on the same page right where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com today and join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 and official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now, folks, on this New Year's holiday and certainly in 2025, don't forget to check out ChiefsDigest.com, NFL33.com, and RTRFootball.com, because you can get more information there. We're obviously going to be here 5 days a week for you like we always are, for free on every platform. But if you need that much more, you can also get it at our text line at 816-357-8781. Now, Matt, thank you to the NFL. I appreciate PR giving us the scenarios. It does clarify a couple of things, but it's very cut and dry, right? We know after all this analysis that Chiefs are playing backups against a team that just needs to win to get in. That's all the Denver Broncos care about. beat the Chiefs, even half strength, and you get to play your playoffs. That's fine. I personally think that that's the best scenario for the Chiefs going into this playoff run. But the other scenarios are very, very, very interesting to me. If the Chiefs backups just overachieve and are able to thwart what has been a solid defense that's been a little bit more shaky of late, and a rookie quarterback that I've been very high on ever since he came out in the draft cycle, but is a bit up and down, what does that do? It opens the door for two teams in particular, and I think that has repercussions. If the Broncos lose and the Chiefs backups do their job, then Miami wins, they're in. They lose, the Bengals are in. For the Bengals to get here, which I personally love this aspect of it, anybody wins that isn't them, they're out. That's great. For you, though, the Bengals have a chance, just matchup on matchup, of giving the Bills a really hard time. I do think that's something to consider. Obviously, the explosiveness of the receiving core in Miami could give multiple teams a hard time. So from your point of view, what's the best case scenario for this game for who gets that 7th seed?
Yeah, I mean, the one piece of information that the Chiefs will have going in is, are the Bengals an option? If the Bengals win on Saturday, then the Chiefs will know whether or not they can be a team. Then it literally comes down to Broncos or the Dolphins. And, and the Chiefs obviously have a lot of influence there. They can't affect what the Dolphins are going to do against the Jets. Although if the Dolphins don't beat the Jets, they seal their own fate. Yeah. But if the Bengals win, then the Chiefs could then know, hey, it's either they can knock the Broncos out, and then it just be either the Bengals or the Dolphins. And remember, the Chiefs, I mean, even though they don't have 100% control, they have a little bit of control over it. And what are they doing? They're choosing an opponent for Buffalo. And so to me, it's really, and I don't think that Andy Reid's going to go into this saying, hey, would I rather, Buffalo have to face? Mm-hmm. But who would be the tougher challenge? I mean, Nick Jacobs, my guy over at our podcast on 41 is the Mic, he's convinced me that I think you would want that Buffalo offense going up against that Denver defense. Because let's face it, if it's Buffalo and Cincinnati, that's going to be a defensive pillow fight. It's going to be the first one to 50 wins. There will be defense optional in that game. But Josh Allen against that Denver defense might get roughed up a little bit. And then, of course, that maybe determines, who do you want to face eventually down the road? And I'll be honest. I mean, at this point, I've also been told that I think that the toughest team outside the Chiefs in the AFC is the Ravens. They're the ones that play the best football. How their approach this season, at least the way that it has looked on paper, is very similar to the Chiefs. They are battle tested. They've played a lot of playoff teams, and as bad as their defense has been, it's been really good against playoff caliber teams. They've just been terrible against everybody else. To a degree, like I said, that's why they kind of remind me of maybe the Chiefs of 2023, because the Chiefs obviously won the Super Bowl. They were the best team in the league last year. Did they look like it most of the regular season? No, they did not. But Baltimore has looked like one of the best teams in the league when they're playing playoff teams. And that's what would scare me, is that they've just been really good when they face tough competition. So, hey, would you rather face Buffalo, the 2 seed, rather than Baltimore? And obviously Baltimore, you don't even know. I mean, we're talking about this right now like they're the 3 seed. They could lose to the Steelers on Saturday and end up being the 5 seed, in which case everything just gets topsy-turvy.
Yeah, absolutely. If they do that, and they were to then survive the wild card round, which I would probably still put money on them to do so, then you're talking about it's Ravens-Chiefs. And that's a different scenario, especially knowing that if that happens and the 7 seed, whoever it is, if Buffalo gets through them, then you're talking about the Chiefs having to play the Ravens followed by the Bills. And that is a scenario that I think at all costs they want to avoid. So I agree with you. And I'm glad that Nick convinced you, because then I don't have to convince you, because I'm right in the same book. I think the best thing to do is put a defense on Josh Allen and force him to battle through it. And that's really what I'm looking at as well. So best case scenario, great. Worst case scenario is probably the one that you already outlined. But does Miami give you any pause whatsoever? What if the Bengals could win 2 and get to face the Chiefs? Does that give you any pause? Anything in the peripherals that is more of a concern?
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing is that you're thinking about who would be that divisional round matchup game, and obviously if anybody knocks off Buffalo in that 7 seed, they would be coming to Arrowhead. So it could be any one of these teams. It could be a 6 seed. It could be a 5 seed. It could be a 4 seed. I mean, the Chiefs could literally face anybody except Buffalo and the winner of the North. Anybody else could be coming to Kansas City in that divisional round game. But if you just focus it to the 7 seeds, would Miami scare me? I mean, they would obviously in this scenario be coming off of going to Buffalo and winning a game.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, how much do you really feel like Miami's got in the tank? They have just been through so much and so many injuries. I mean, the probability of them being able to go to Buffalo and win and then to Kansas City and win seems just astronomical. I mean, I feel like there's a better chance of a meteor hitting me before that happens. The one team that probably would scare me the most in that 7 seed spot, though, or emerging from that 6-7 seed situation, would be the Chargers. I mean, especially because you think about the Chargers, if they get the 6 seed and they've just beaten maybe Baltimore and they're coming to Kansas City, that would scare me. I mean, I think the Chargers are scarier than the Bengals because I think the Chargers are a more complete team. If the Bengals come to Kansas City, all they can do is score. You know that because their defense has been terrible this year. But Chiefs have also seen Cincinnati, and I think they've seen the best of Cincinnati. Even if it was back in week 2, I'm just not sure that Joe Burrow and the Bengals have any tricks that the Chiefs haven't seen over the years. I think they've seen their best. So conversely, I mean, I know that Andy Reid, I may know that Matt Nagy, probably even Steve Spagnuolo have some surprises for whomever they're going to face. Yeah. And let's face it. I mean, right now we're talking about from Christmas Day on to January 18th or 19th, whenever the Chiefs play, 24, 25 days, whatever it may end up being. I mean, the Chiefs aren't spending all that time working on the Broncos. I mean, the Chiefs are doing that by looking at the entire AFC field. They're going back to the games that they played against every single one of these teams except Miami, and they're looking at everything else. That is all prep work. So, obviously the Chiefs are doing prep work right now. They're not worrying about the Broncos. They're worrying about the postseason. And then, and then you get to that week and you narrow it down. I mean, who it's going to be, got pretty good chances. I mean, the Chiefs are going to be able to do essentially a week plus of scouting on potentially every single team that they could face in that divisional round before they even get to that week.
Yep.
So to me, that's just an astronomical advantage. And you give that kind of advantage to an Andy Reid team, I mean, I don't care who you are. I just don't think you're going to win that scenario.
Yeah, look out is all I'm going to say. To get there, they do have to finish the regular season. What do those matchups look like? And what do we think does go down against the Broncos coming up next? Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings. Prize Picks has daily fantasy sports and makes it accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your money. Run your game all season long at Prize Picks. They make it simple, and they even invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out, even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So sign up today, and you can get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. You don't even have to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the Game Time app and use our code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $50 instantly after you play a $5 lineup. Super simple. Download that app, use our code LOCKEDONNFL, and get that $50 bonus for playing a $5 lineup. Super easy over at Prize Picks. Folks, don't forget to go to ChiefsDigest.com, Chiefs Digest on this channel, on this platform, as well as NFL 33 and RGR football. We would appreciate it. Matt, this is the fun part because as we've outlined, we both want the Chiefs to lose this week. So matchups become very, very telling. There's one that I think they should highlight that I want to throw out there because we did get the Pro Bowl voting totals this week. And the AFC leader happens to be the Kansas City Chief. That's Travis Kelce. There's also another Chief leading his positional voting, and he's going to be featured in this game. Y'all stop me if I cried about it before. Carson Steele has the most votes for fullback in the AFC. He should be a starter. I think they should lean on him and give everybody else a rest and see what happens. How do you like that approach?
Yeah, we'll see how the I guess the other third of the voting outside the fan voting goes at that fullback spot. Because I mean, I don't even know if Carson Steele knows he's a fullback. Chiefs don't think if he's a fullback. I mean, and I had to look it up just to see how many of his snaps he's actually played at fullback. I mean, he's only played about a quarter of his offensive snaps. So, I mean, he's lined up there, at least according to the PFF, more than I thought he had. So I guess he's technically a fullback, but we'll see how the rest of that voting comes out, because I mean, let's face it, Pro Bowl voting, if you can figure it out, you're smarter than the NFL, because they don't know how they determine the voting. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, he's going to get a chance. I mean, I mean, if I'm the Chiefs, I mean, they do need somebody else, because I mean, as much as I know Anthony Sherman loved being the featured back, after they had an injury in Week 17 back in 2017, and he was the only running back that they were willing to put back in the game since Kareem Hunt was already on ice after he'd gotten the rushing title. I wouldn't want to repeat that if I'm the Chiefs. So, hey, do you bring up Keontae Ingram to let him play? Do you have, Isaiah Pacheco? I don't think is going to play this week with the ribs. I don't think you want him to play. I personally wouldn't want Kareem Hunt playing, because I think you're going to need him, and you just don't want to take the chance. So, that means that you would need a little bit more of Samaje Perine. And I'm not even sure if I want Samaje Perine to play a lot in this game. I mean, is there a guy you're really I think you're going to count on a lot in the postseason. So how they divvy up the backfield to me will be a little bit interesting, and maybe will just be, oh, great, 27 carries and touches for Carson Steele. Doesn't matter. Just go nuts, young man.
I hope so. That's just a personal thing, obviously. In the passing game, I do think I personally would rest Hollywood myself. I don't see any reason to push that. Again, I don't think, especially with Pat not playing, that there's enough payoff there. And let's face it, arguably the best corner in the league is going to be playing opposite in Pat's stand. So I don't see the benefit. Would you play Hollywood at this point, or would you let some of the younger guys come up?
Yeah, and that's, once again, I mean, you're limited to the 2 practice squad elevations. So, I mean, at least even though you've got a bunch of receivers, I mean, you could go heavy with Nico Remigio and Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, Justin Watson, they could play the majority of all of your snaps, and therefore, you don't have to get into the DeAndre Hopkins and the Hollywood Browns of it all and everything. So that would be an advantage. But you are just a little bit limited as far as that goes. And I like I said, I mean, I'm assuming that one of those practice squad elevations will be used on Chris Oladokun. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised the other one was on Keontae Ingram, just because I think, you kind of want some back up there at the running back spot without having to lean on some guys. Even if not, you might end up using that on the defensive side for an extra, linebacker, defensive line, safety, something for special teams. So that's the tricky thing about figuring out your lineup when you want to rest as many of your starters as you can. It gets easy at some spots because, I mean, the Chiefs are carrying like 10 offensive linemen. So you could conceivably, rest your entire starters without, affecting anything. But, hey, it does affect, certain other spots. And, some starters and some guys are going to have to play. And that's, hey, Brian Cook, for instance, I think Brian Cook could use a week off of rest because he's played a lot this year coming off of surgery. He's probably just going to have to be active from a number standpoint, but I would still rather play a lot of Chamari Connor and a lot of Jaden Hicks. If you could find a way to get Deion Bush out there too. I mean, that's another guy that I think you'd like to see. So it gets a little bit more difficult at some spots trying to figure out which starters to play and which ones to rest. But to your point, and maybe it circles back, I mean, there might be some spots that it's just like, all right, you're going to go out and play this spot. And maybe we get a Colin Saunders type surprise where, we get a guy that's like, okay, well, today you're a linebacker.
It would be fun. I'm looking for that constantly. I would like to see George Karlaftis do that, to tell you the truth. I'd like Leo and George to just switch for it.
George Karlaftis doesn't need to take any snaps, but
no, but somebody's got to, right? Like, we've already talked so many scenarios. I wonder if George isn't one of the guys that may have to play because there just isn't enough time to rest everybody else. Obviously, you rotate as much as possible to keep the snaps down, and that makes perfect sense to me. But it's going to be a long road. I'm really interested, again, to see who they elevate, what they do with it, and who actually gets to be active on that game. How do you see this one go?
Yeah, well, I don't think anybody will be complaining about Josh Uche not playing. So that should be at least one thing that's taken care of this week. I can't believe you're actually asking me how this game's going to play out. I
Yeah,
mean,
I got to get something from you.
it's all backups. How am I supposed to know how this is going to play out? You know what? I mean, I figure it's going to be a Chiefs game, which is that the Chiefs are going to figure out some way to keep this thing close. I think it's going to be fairly low scoring. So I still can't take the Chiefs to win because they're not going to be trying to win really hard. They could win it because the stranger things have happened. The Broncos might choke. With so much pressure on the line, they showed a little signs of cracking last week against the Bengals. I mean, they lost a couple of games now when pressure has been on them. So maybe they will crack a little bit under the pressure. This is a team that's not quite ready for prime time yet. Next year might be a different story, but right now, not quite ready. So maybe they will crack a little bit. But I think that just, ends up making it a lower scoring game. The Chiefs, like I said, I mean, backups will be trying to win, but this is the game that the Broncos should win. Will they? It's tougher, but I'll still take the Broncos. I just think it's going to be lower scoring. So I will go with Denver 17, Kansas City 10. Still not quite a cover for the Broncos since last I saw it's like a 9.5 point spread.
Yeah, that's a tough call, folks. You're going to get mine on Friday along with Chris. Matt, thanks for rolling out the 8 ball there and see what comes up. We appreciate you.
My pleasure, Ryan. Happy New Year, my friend.
Everyone, thank you for a great 2024. Enjoy your new year. Welcome to 2025. We will have it all for you as the Chiefs get ready to go on that run. We've been talking about it for, 6 or 8 or 10 months. Let's get after it. Thank you for 2024. Have a great one. We will see you next year.